to fixed wireline urban rates for the same level of service in other areas. The national average that we're looking at is $72 a month. For AT&T, what we're finding for the services that we're offering, it's averaging about $20 to $29 a month. But the cost of the service cannot exceed the $72.
That's a landline?
No, this is broadband.
Broadband, it's broadband.
This is broadband service, yes. This is specifically for broadband. Okay, and part of the requirements was that you must meet specific deployment milestone dates by state, and what those were is that you had to have a 40% build by 2017 end of year, you had to have 60% by end of year 2018, 80% by 2019, and 100% by 2020. Now, if all those requirements were met, you could potentially expand into 2021 if there was some, circumstances that warranted it. So the other thing is, part of the broadband obligation was that you must continue to offer voice service, that you must continue to participate in the Lifeline program, as well as being required to bid on all E-rate RFPs in the CAF II census block areas. And then you're subject to annual speed and latency performance testing, as well as at least one audit per state during the funding term. So the ability to build in extremely high-cost census blocks and get CAF II credit, but only at CAF II subsidy and cannot seek further subsidies. What does that mean? That means that in accepting the funding for CAF II, if we decide to build in those high-cost areas, which is not what they fund it for right now, if they come out with a CAF III and offer funding for that higher build area, we cannot go back and request the funding or reimbursement because we built in those areas today. Okay, that's what that means.
Quick question, voice service, is this voice over IP or the traditional?
It's the voice service that's currently being offered today. And it could be addition of having voice over IP.
But this one specifically is landline.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So, and who was eligible for the funding? The people that were eligible were the ILECs that were allowed to accept the CAF II dollars on a state-by-state region, and it's the ones that were covering that particular area. In addition to that, the money accepted must be used in the state allocated, and the household requirements must be met on a state-by-state basis. So on a national basis, AT&T accepted funding with the exception of 3 states. We didn't accept it in Nevada, Oklahoma, or Missouri. So what did AT&T actually accept? In August 2015, we accepted $427 million per year in CAF II support for each of the next 6 years. And these funds are going to be used to deploy, maintain, and offer internet access and voice service in FCC-identified census blocks in 18 states located within our footprint. Again, the money accepted must be used in the state, so it's not like we can accept the money in California and say we're going to go and spend that money somewhere else or take money from another state and bring it to California. Whatever the allocation was, you have to spend within that particular state. In California, AT&T is receiving $60 million a year over the term of the 4-year period. And in California, our obligation is to ensure that we offer internet access to more than 141,500 homes and small businesses in the FCC-identified census blocks. And the one thing I want to emphasize here, we must offer it. It's not up to us that people take it. What's important is that it is in fact being offered.
So is the intent of this to provide internet to areas that don't have the traditional?
Mm-hmm. The intent of it is what the FCC looked at is that in rural areas in particular, we're not getting access to broadband services because they're higher costs to build. And so what they looked at was supplementing that with CAF II funding. And so ILECs had the opportunity whether or not they wanted to accept that funding in the areas that they provide the service. And they didn't have to accept it. AT&T decided to accept it primarily because we felt it was a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to bring the service to rural areas where it's affordable for us as a company to bring it, because prior it's been cost prohibitive because of the high cost per user.
Alice, before you, since you hit that point, AT&T opted out of the first, that first round of CAF funding. What was the reason you got that AT&T held back on? on that first round?
Only thing I could tell you is that was before AP, who's Alice Perez. And so I really don't know. And I do have some other folks here today. I have Tim Ray, who's our regional vice president, and I also have David Scott, who's the program manager for the CAF II rollout in this particular area.
And then in the second phase of funding, there was, 5 vendors that accepted 1.5 million or so. I don't remember the exact amount, but it was quite a bit of funding, and AT&T was within that mix.
So to clarify, 60 million in the next 6 years for all of California?
Yes. To build out access to 141,500 homes and small businesses. Okay. So AT&T Fixed Wireless Internet is the product to deliver high-speed internet access to mostly rural 1.1 million homes and small businesses. And our plan is to deploy the fixed wireless technology. And so the fixed wireless internet is a service that uses fixed wireless last-minute connection between the fiber at a cell tower and the customer premises to provide high-speed internet access. This service is anticipated to support speeds in excess of 10 download and 1 upload. Okay? Customers will also have the ability to bundle with other products that we have to help reduce the cost of the services.
Like UVerse?
UVerse or DirecTV, whatever other services may be available in their area.
The technology for wireless can do that? That speed? I mean, it's...
I'm going to show you what we're going to do. Yeah. So the service will require the installation of a small wireless antenna at the customer premise that will connect to a wireless router in the home. And what does that look like? Kind of looks like a small pizza box is what it looks like. And so this is the AT&T Fixed Wireless Internet customer premise equipment. And so that little pizza box looking thing will actually be either on a pole by the home or on the home itself. It'll be located, it's one per premise is how it will be rolled out. So AT&T Fixed Wireless Internet, our infrastructure to build, is actually going to be done in one of 3 ways. Okay, so one way is deployment of dedicated antenna and equipment on top of existing AT&T mobile LTE cell sites. Okay, so we're going to look at existing sites. How do we build out on those existing sites? The second way is to add the fixed wireless internet and the LTE equipment to existing third-party cell sites. Now, what did I just tell you? What I'm telling you is that the counties are actually going to get a twofer because we're not obligated to build out the LTE, which is the cell equipment. We're not obligated to do that, but AT&T is going to make a significant investment to actually build out that service as well. We feel that since we're going in and we have funding to help build out this infrastructure, we might as well make the additional investment to make the service even better. And the third way we're going to be looking at is erecting new towers when necessary. And on those new towers, we will be adding both fixed wireless as well as the mobility LTE antenna and equipment. And again, it's a twofer. It's not only offering the broadband services, but it's also bringing the cell services into that area as well.
I think that speaks to the last time you were here, and you said, would you have a different attitude? Would you decide differently if there were, 100 plus more towers actually available?
I don't know if I said 100. I might have said 30 or something.
I think you were asking a hypothetical that
Right.
would more towers change our decision?
So what I'm going to show you now is a series of pictures of what this could potentially look like so that you can get a verbal view of what that build-out would look like, okay? So the modification of existing AT&T cell sites. So this is a picture of an existing cell site. And if you look at the top corner, that's a closer view of what that cell site looks like, okay? Look at the top corner, and what I'm going to show you now is the proposed replacement antenna. So I'm going to go backwards for a second so you guys can see the modification in that. That's what it looked like before, and that's what it's going to look like. So you can see it's a very minimal modification that we're looking to add to that tower, okay? Here's another look at what an existing site could look like, and then here's a modification. I'm going to go back so that you can see that. That's before, and that would be with the new equipment. Okay, so you can see it's a very minimal impact to the existing equipment if we're modifying an existing AT&T site today. Okay, here's another one. That's an existing site, and then if we do a modification, that's what the modification is going to look like. So do you see the difference in the two? Okay. So now what I'm going to show you is a series of pictures of what it's going to look like if we're adding AT&T fixed wireless internet and the LTE equipment and antenna to existing third-party sites, what that would look like. So this is an existing site today, and this would be an addition of the new antenna.
When you say a third-party site, you're talking about a site that's owned by Verizon,
Or somebody else.
and then you're going to, okay.
Now, the one thing that I want you to understand about this, though, is in order for us to co-locate on an existing site, it has to be a tall site. We have to be at least 65 feet up in order to co-locate. Otherwise, we won't have the range of service that we need to offer it.
Rooftop co-location, you're talking about tower.
Yeah,
And also concurrence from the owner.
absolutely, for certain, yeah. So the infrastructure build, our engineers have identified potential existing AT&T cell sites where modifications will need to be made. In Eldorado County, there's 4 of those sites today that we've identified, okay? Our engineers have also identified within the census blocks where they would need to find existing third-party sites or build new sites in order to get maximum coverage of the CAF II eligible areas. There's 34 in Eldorado County. So of all the counties that I cover, Eldorado has the largest potential build here of all my counties. And so there's a lot of factors that we consider looking at these different sites that the engineers take into consideration. One of the most important things to understand, though, is that if the movement of a cell site, even by 100 feet, can significantly impact the ability of that site's range for the serving area that we're looking at. So what I'm going to show you is a couple of maps, and one of the things you have to keep into consideration is that the way we've identified these sites is because we feel it's going to give us the maximum amount of potential people that we can actually offer the service to in those sites. So somebody might say, well, why don't you move the site over here? Well, part of it is because we want to get the maximum amount of coverage with each of those sites. So here's a map of Eldorado County today. The yellow area is where AT&T services are today. So all the other area of the county is not, we are not the service provider. We are not the ILEC in that area. But anything that's yellow is where AT&T provides service today. So did you guys notice the change with the green? Okay, what that is that's the accepted CAF II blocks. Those are the sites that have been designated by the FCC as the CAF II eligible census blocks that can be built. Okay? And now what I'm going to show you is that overlay of color now. It's what's considered to be the extremely high-cost census blocks. So the extremely high-cost census blocks are not the areas that we got funding to provide this initial round of services in, okay? And so now what I'm going to show you is our overlay of where we're actually looking to provide the services. And again, this is where we're considering providing it today. The next stage of this is going to be our engineers coming in and working diligently with the staff to make sure that we can actually bring the services. So a couple of things I want to point out to you. I'm going to stand for a second. The blue dots on here are existing sites today of AT&T, and what we're looking to do with those sites is to modify those sites to where we can provide the additional service. Those are already existing AT&T towers, okay? All of these color sites on this map, you will actually see 34, and some of them are really little. Some of them are very little, okay? But they'll cover not only within that site, but they'll cover the area around them as well. There's 34 of those sites up there that we're considering to actually provide services to actually build. And so we'll either have to do one of two things. We'll either have to find a partner that will allow us to co-locate with them, or we'll have to actually build a new tower in those areas.
I can't see, is that Highway 50 there?
Yeah. So this right here, you guys can come up closer if you want to look.
There you go.
This is 50 through here. This is 50, okay? This is 89 right here. That's South Lake Tahoe over there. This is 49 going this way, and that's 193 going up that way.
So the 4 existing towers that you have are
1,
the...
2, 3, 4.
Oh, okay.
Those are our 4 existing sites. Don't confuse them with the black dots, which actually, the black dots are actually cities within the county.
but the blue sites are where we actually have cell towers today. And we'll modify those towers is what we'll do to offer the additional service.
And you're not laying any fiber with the funding, right?
This is not fiber funding.
It's all fixed wireless.
Yep. So what is AT&T asking? What we're asking is assistance from the counties to streamline the permitting and modifications to existing cell sites. So we'll be working with city staff, and when we're looking at some of these sites, we're hopeful that the process will go very quickly because we have a timeline we need to adhere to, and our hope is to be able to do the modifications. We'll start with modifications. We'll do those primarily in 2017. The additional thing that we're asking for is assistance from the county identifying government-owned property, if you have some, where you might potentially want to be AT&T's landlord and locating new cell sites in some of these identified census blocks. The third thing is assistance from the county identifying other willing landlords for new cell sites and identified census blocks. So our engineers have been working with our contractor, and we have actually identified some land sites so far for new builds. We have sent some letters out to individuals already asking if they're interested in allowing us to build cell towers on those sites. So that process has already started, okay? And then thirdly is just streamlining permitting for new cell sites serving the CAF II areas. And that concludes our presentation.
So it seems to me that there are two fundamental asks, and that is making modification to existing towers and the process for a new tower.
Potentially.
Okay. I think, though, we have our experts in the room. I believe that co-locating on a existing tower is something that our zoning ordinance can accommodate with the minimal amount of activity. And that's something that actually changed here in Eldorado County as of December of 2015. We included that in our zoning ordinance. So I would expect that our ability to streamline that process ought to be pretty straightforward. You know, the construction of the towers, as you showed them, obviously are very controversial because of the aesthetic downsides of those towers. And the process by which we bring those forward tend to have, you know, depending upon their location, tend to have some pretty serious community pushback depending upon where they are. And that process is what it is. So, and, you know, as far as identifying other opportunities of government buildings, you know, obviously there are some areas where you're targeting, but if you provide those to the county, I think we can help to try to match them up the best that we can.
So my hope is that, you know, the county residents, they want the service. It's hard to have your cake and eat it too, and so they want the service, and so because they want the service, that they understand what's necessary to actually get access to the service.
You'd think so. They do want the service until it's located next to them, right, or outside their window, or, you know, you know, the challenge of that. On the other hand, co-locating on existing towers, particularly with the images that you showed us, has very little additional impact to those towers. So.
So, above and beyond, county owns property of the county, but in the rural areas, I would look at the fire districts. Typically, they have fire stations in and near where communities are, and potential revenue stream, I would consider. I would
We're going to be looking at all options.
look at all of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Roger, do you have a second here? So, Roger, you've heard the presentation. I know from experience, cell towers, they're tricky. I see the smile on your face, you know what I'm talking about. How accommodating can we be to try to get some internet services in these rural areas? At the same time, still go through the process. There's things that we absolutely have to do. How much, I mean, help me out here. How can we?
Roger Trout, Development Services Division Director. I think the word process is key.
Process, sure.
And there are some federal laws that guide us on timelines for processing these types of permits, telecommunication facilities. So my staff is very trained, very qualified to perform the analysis and process these permits. And so that's a focus we've had because we knew the economic development benefit, the communication benefit, the safety benefit. So it's a high priority for us to deliver those projects. I consider that consistent with the economic development policy, board policy J2. So my staff will expedite those permits, and we work closely with all the providers and meet with them regularly and support their their goals.
And these are conditional use permits.
Most are conditional use permits with negative declarations, the CEQA document associated with them. So they could take a little while for a new tower. Supervisor Rinaldi's spot on. Co-locations are somewhat streamlined, so you meet certain criteria. We push you through with a building permit. If you might need a minor modification, maybe raising the tower more than 15 feet, you need to come back and revise the use permit for the tower. So we work closely with everybody, and we're on board.
So we can go ahead, Supervisor. For Roger or for?
Yeah.
Okay, Roger, thank you.
So these areas that you're expanding to, have you done research to see if other local providers are offering the wireless service or not?
What we looked at is these are areas that were identified by CAF II census blocks, which they're saying the services are not offered in those particular areas. There's a lot of things that are taken into consideration on how they've identified those areas. So what we're looking at is just the areas that they've given us and how we can provide service in that area.
What I'm trying to figure out is, you're a larger company getting into areas that they have these smaller providers and kind of the opposite of the competition that we want to see happen. And then, so you are not, in Eldorado County, what areas are you offering the fixed wireless service right now?
It's a new product. Excuse me. It's a new product.
It's a brand new product for
AT&T. That we'll be
AT&T.
offering, yeah.
For the entire...
For the CAF II build-out in the whole state of California.
And also other states, or just California?
It's in other states. It's the product that we're using.
Okay. And then... so the other number that you threw out there was the 10 megabytes download when upload. But these are areas, do you know what percentage of these areas are, because 10 on 1, to be honest with you, it's not that bad when you compare it to some of the other residents that are on a much lower DSL, I would say.
A lot better than dial-up.
Or dial-up.
So FCC requires 10.1. So that's what we're looking to deliver.
I think they moved, when that threshold moved, they changed that.
Right. So in many areas, it could potentially be better. That's what we're hoping for. But the minimum FCC requirement is 10.1.
10.1 for you to deliver? What is the... So
10.1
right now
for anybody that accepts CAF II funding to deliver.
So the criteria for giving you the funding is that what kind of service and speed do they have currently?
I'm not sure about consideration of what kind of speed they currently have. What was part of the funding requirement was that it had to be 10.1.
Yeah,
the new product had to deliver that.
The 10.1, but I want to know what the base is and what RV, is it nothing? Is it, is it like 6 and, 780?
I don't know how the FCC identified that.
I don't know how they came up with
Yeah, the FCC has a website that you can reference that has extensive amount of information on that. You might be able to find that information on their website as far as how they've identified that.
Okay, that sounds good. And then the other comment I have is I believe that if this board, which I believe everybody is going to like the idea to expand the service, we can direct staff to work with you instead of trying to figure it out at the podium on what can be done. So,
Yeah, this was really informational. It wasn't to ask you to take action today. It was really informational because our next step is to work with staff. I'll be helping to schedule meetings with our engineers to actually work with staff to identify for the different types of build that we're looking to do, where there might be partnering opportunities or what may need to be a new build. So that is the next step. Yeah.
thank you.
Good. Okay. I will open this item for public comment. Anybody wishing to speak in this item, now is your opportunity to do so. Please come forward now. Seeing no one come forward, I will close public comment. This was a receive and file. Alice, thank you,
Thank you.
and appreciate your time.
Thanks, Alice.
All right. It's 2:02. Let's go ahead and hear item number 36.